Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. It's an honor to come here. I've been here a couple times before, and it's always been a pleasure to meet each of you. MashaAllah, this community is so diverse, and we're so appreciative of the support that this community in particular has given to our organization. I know most of you are already familiar with the work that we do, so I don't have to go into too much detail about our work, but MashaAllah, the staff at CAIR is, they're making amazing progress on a day-to-day basis, and it's been such an honor for me to be able to work with some of the most amazing people in the country, MashaAllah. CAIR, as you already know, we're involved in a lot of different aspects. We have several different departments within CAIR that deal with, outreach to other organizations, for example, interfaith groups or civil rights groups. We have a department that deals primarily with government affairs, reaching out to politicians and trying to create positive policies or, discuss certain, other policies that might have a negative impact on the Muslim community. We have, the government affairs, we have safe spaces that works mostly on, working proactively with various institutions, whether hospitals or nursing homes or schools, and trying to create positive policies and rules of procedure at these institutions to kind of prevent the discrimination from happening in the first place. So I can go on and on about the different departments, mashallah, that we have, but what I'm going to talk about today has nothing to do with that. I'm going to be focusing only on the legal aspect of CAIR, and particularly CAIR Michigan. What are the cases that we've filed? Essentially, where we step in is after the discrimination's already taken place. So whereas many of the other departments work more proactively, the legal department will step in after somebody's been harmed. And our responsibility at that point is to correct that harm. And in advocating for that one particular individual that might have been harmed, we would actually be creating law that impacts other Muslims that suffer from the same harm. Inshallah, so that's our goal. We are the nation's, alhamdulillah, the nation's largest civil rights advocacy organization advocating on behalf of Muslims. Next slide. So the first case that I want to talk about is regarding profiling at the border. We received several complaints, an alarming number of complaints actually, from Muslims that were not only being subjected to religious profiling at the border. I'm sure everybody, especially the sisters, have been subjected to religious profiling at the border many, many, many times. We've become accustomed to that, unfortunately. It shouldn't be that way. But these complaints take it a step further. They have all alleged that we're talking about US-born American Muslims that are primarily Arab, primarily men, that every single time they go into Canada and come back into the United States, they're pulled aside by customs authorities, they're stopped, so their cars are surrounded by armed agents, they're handcuffed, pushed against their vehicles, doesn't matter, men, women, children in the vehicle, doesn't make a difference on how they how they arrest this individual and surround it with armed agents. One particular client told us that he actually saw snipers that were aiming in his direction. They take them in and they subject them to hours and hours of questioning about what? About their religious practices and their religious beliefs. Nothing about criminal background, nothing about national security. The questions were, how many times a day do you pray? Which masjid do you pray at? Who is your imam? What types of religious activities or religious organizations are you involved in? These are the types of questions, and they were consistent across the board. Everybody was telling us the exact same set of questions. So what we did is a two-pronged approach. We, on the one hand, filed a complaint with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. And we brought this forward as there needs to be a policy change. There's obviously discrimination against these Muslims. On the other hand, the Department of Justice is not going to be able to correct any harm that's happening with these particular people. These Muslims are being subjected to the exact same treatment every time they cross back into the United States. we need to get that problem corrected. Now, there's been a number of challenges filed by Muslims in the country. Not that many, I can count them on my right hand. Just a few challenges in the courts regarding religious profiling of Muslims at the border. These cases have been consistently tossed out by the court at the very first stage in the lawsuit. And the reason these cases have been tossed out is because customs authorities at the border have plenary power, which means they have very broad authority to do whatever they deem necessary in the interest of national security to determine who they're going to let into the country and who they're not going to. And so the courts give a lot of deference to customs, and they allow them to, for example, handcuff people for long periods of time, to do a lot of things that we might find to be unfair and unnecessary, but courts have upheld these things. What we did is we drafted our lawsuit in such a way where we pinpointed religious discrimination and religious profiling for the purpose of religious questions that are unconstitutional. We made it purely about religious discrimination. We did not mention the snipers. We did not mention the handcuffing. We didn't even challenge that one of our plaintiffs was handcuffed to a stool and left in a storage closet for 11 hours before he was even questioned. We didn't even mention any of these things. We focused only on the fact that these people have been selected for the purpose of being asked religious questions. And the judge, for the first time in history, agreed with us. This is the first case ever that has been allowed to move to the next stage. And now, alhamdulillah, it's a very huge victory. And we're now, in the second stage where we can start collecting evidence. We have subpoena power. We can take the testimonies of the highest government officials that were involved in these policies. And we have the power to get all the records of all Muslims that have been detained across the whole country and what that questioning was like, and to challenge that policy. The judge agrees that this is unconstitutional. So long as we can prove what we've said, we will win this case, inshallah. So I just want to quote the judge. It's a great quote. He says, "This case presents an issue of first impression that to the court's knowledge has never been addressed by another court in the nation. In short, the question before the court is whether the government has unfettered discretion to question at the border a specific class of individuals about their religious practices and beliefs after being profiled and detained solely because of those religious practices and beliefs." So the next case that I want to discuss, and how many of you are familiar with the shooting and killing of the religious leader in Detroit? I think most of you are familiar with the case, so I won't go into too much detail, but essentially what happened, Allah yarhamah, before the shooting, for 3 years the FBI had sent in informants into this mosque. And there was one particular informant that befriended the imam, became his best friend, and tried to lure him for 3 years to try to commit a crime. And the imam kept refusing, he kept refusing, he kept refusing. Everything is recorded, wiretapped. The mosque was surveilled. And on this particular day, on October 28th, 2009, the informant told the imam, and he is the imam of the poorest masjid and the poorest segment of Detroit, which is the poorest city in the country. This mosque has not been able to fix a glass window at the front of the mosque for over 10 years. So, and I'll talk a little bit about the mosque later on, but essentially what this informant did is he reached out to the imam and said, and he used to do this many times before, let's, pick out, hand select the people that need the money the most in your community, and, I have a day's worth of hard labor. Why don't they come? They can load and unload boxes at a warehouse. It's a known warehouse in Dearborn during the daytime. They went there, and their impression is that they're loading and unloading boxes. All of a sudden, they're surrounded by 80 FBI armed agents, SWAT team with the whole gear and everything. And, hands down, just like the movies, literally. And everyone gets down to the ground, his arms are outstretched in front of him. He lays down flat on the ground, and they release a canine who mauls him, attacks him, breaks his jaw, severe wounds all over his arms and his face, and then they shoot him to death. So the narrative by the FBI was that he was armed and he was engaged in a shootout with the FBI agents, and that's why they killed him. We didn't believe this story because he was a well-known, respected religious leader. So we dug into it. We filed 6 Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. We obtained over 1,000 pages of evidence. We obtained video footage, audio, police cam footage, everything, forensics, autopsy photos. And we were able to see the video of what happened inside the warehouse. There was no shootout. He was not armed. He surrendered. He got down, face down on the ground. It's exactly as I described it to you. So we filed a wrongful death lawsuit on this case. We filed it at least about a year ago, and until now, and this is unheard of, until now the government has refused to answer this lawsuit. They have tried every possible attempt to get this case thrown out before they even address the merits of the case. Next slide. So I have a quote here from the judge who got tired of their games that they're playing. This is from an order that he issued. This is a case where it is unacceptable that neither the Office of the United States Attorney nor the Office of the Attorney General has filed an appearance or an answer. The court hereby orders the government to file with the court within 30 days answers to the complaint. This was back in May. They still have not answered the lawsuit. So it's just an ongoing battle. It's a case that they just do not want to address. Now, the next issue that I want to bring up, since it's been happening before, of course, since 9/11, but since Park 51 incident in New York, there's been organized nationwide opposition movements, organized by certain groups that are perpetuating Islamophobia. And these opposition groups they're actually looking to see if Islamic institutions are filing zoning petitions, meaning they want to build an Islamic center, Islamic institution, they want to expand their current center, they want to build a parking lot, they want to build a cemetery. It could be a school, community center, a mosque, anything. They will get the residents to be organized, and they will protest, and they will attend all the hearings and make sure that that petition gets denied. Now, in this particular case, this is out in Sterling Heights, AMDA, the American-Muslim Diversity Association, filed a permit to build the first masjid in the city of Sterling Heights. Our opposition movement, huge. Over 1,000 signatures in opposition. Hundreds and hundreds of people showed up at the hearings in opposition to this mosque. Most of the people didn't even fit in the hearing room, but they were there to put pressure. Comment after comment after comment. I have never seen such racism and hostility, I don't think, in my entire life. The most bigoted comments about Muslims, we don't want them here, that the mosque is a symbol of oppression, and so on and so forth. It went on for 6 hours with a round of applause after each comment in opposition to the masjid. I did represent them during their zoning hearings, and alhamdulillah, the planning commission unanimously voted to approve the mosque. So that was a big success. That picture is a groundbreaking ceremony with Congressman Gary Peters and the mayor of Sterling Heights. So they are currently building that masjid. Now, on the other hand, a school, an Islamic school in Ann Arbor called the Michigan Islamic Academy, the MIA, they filed to build an Islamic school in Pittsfield Township. They filed because their current location is deteriorating, it's very small, it's no longer able to hold the capacity of the new student body that's growing. So they bought a beautiful property in Pittsfield Township and designed a plan. They exceeded the requirements that they needed to qualify for. They were overqualified. and they presented their proposal. And similar to the last case, you have a very organized opposition movement against the school. Now, there is a time lapse between these two cases. By the time the MIA case was filed, the opposition movement has become much more, they're very good at what they do now. They have become much more successful. During the time of the Sterling Heights case, the opposition movement was very outwardly hostile, and it didn't work. It turned off the cities, it turned off the commissioners across the country. In this instance, during this time period, now they have talking points. And you'll hear this, whatever case you look up in the country, you'll hear the same talking points. Traffic, even if there's no traffic. Noise, light, it's the same talking points. In this particular case, there were several traffic studies that were done, and all of them said that there would actually be an improvement in traffic. Not only is there going to be no traffic, there's going to be an improvement. There's no noise because the closest homes are very far. Now, it's very, they talk about visual. They don't want to see the mosque behind, or they don't want to see the school behind them. MIA actually offered to construct a whole line of homes to block the neighbors from the school so that they don't even have to look at the school. They still denied it. They cited traffic as the reason why they denied it. So now you have a situation where the commissioners themselves were biased, and they're using a neutral purpose that, traffic. It sounds neutral, but the underlying motive is racist, is religious animus. So we did not represent the school at the time of the hearing because we were not aware of this hearing. But on the very last day of the hearing, the day that the vote was made, I was there to observe. And I witnessed the bias among the commissioners themselves. So we got together and we decided to file a lawsuit in this case because I believe they have a very strong case. And the judge agreed with us on this case. The judge agreed that if we're able to prove that they really were overqualified and they met everything, and they're saying no because of traffic, but there's no traffic. They're saying no because of noise, but there's, and so on and so forth. That we are able to prove that the motive must have been something else, and it probably was religious animus. So this was a big victory for us too. We are in the second stage of this lawsuit. As well, we're collecting evidence and taking the testimonies of all of the officials in the township. So the other important aspect to this case is, for the first time, at least that I'm aware of, in the state of Michigan, a judge ruled that based upon a single vote, the Board of Trustees that voted to deny the school, just based on their one act of voting, if it's based on religious discrimination and not a proper motive, then they're liable. This was also a big ruling that we were able to get from the judge. So we also are involved in a couple high-profile cases that we filed on behalf of prisoners that are facing religious discrimination in prisons. The first case that I want to talk about, we filed against the entire correctional facility system in Michigan, the Michigan Department of Corrections. And the basis of this lawsuit is, it's shocking actually. The prisoners across the entire state, in order to fast in Ramadan, they are required to opt in to the Ramadan program in order to get their meals at support time, which is very early, and their iftar, which is very late. They're not going to coincide with breakfast and dinner. So they have to opt into this program, but when they opt in, they get less than half, and even less than that, than the amount of food that everyone else gets. All prisoners get 2,400 calories per day. Muslims were getting 1,000 per day. And that's if they got their meals on time. A lot of the prisoners that we were getting complaints from across the state They would bring their suhoor late, so they were not able to eat their suhoor. And they would bring the dinner early and then take it because they're not allowed to keep it and wait. So they would take it back. There was one prisoner in particular that I met in the Upper Peninsula. He went for 13 days in Ramadan without any food at all. And these things are all documented. So it really was a situation that was not just religious discrimination, but it qualifies as cruel and unusual punishment. So we filed a lawsuit against the Michigan Department of Corrections, and we got an opinion from the judge that their constitutional rights were violated. So this was a big victory for us as well. Before you move to the next one, the second religious accommodation case in prisons is very interesting. It's Utley versus St. Clair County Jail. Aaron Utley, I filed an appearance on his behalf. He had actually filed his own lawsuit, and we stepped in afterwards. He was forced, because he requested a halal food diet. And at this particular jail, they have halal food. And you would think that he'd be entitled to get it because he's Muslim. But no, they actually forced him to take a 10-question test. And this test was so detailed to the point that I can't imagine how anyone could pass this test. Detailed questions about Islam. He failed the test, they denied him halal food, and they actually said, "You are not a practicing Muslim." This is in writing by the sheriff. Since we switched computers, we had technical difficulties. I cannot show you the test. But I'll give you an example of some of the questions. We did have, by the way, an imam take a look at this test, a very respected imam in Southeast Michigan. He told us that he failed the test. That's how ludicrous this test was. To give you an example, one question is, who first wrote with a pen? Another question was, what is the first obligation of the Ummah? Every person that I've asked this question has given me a different answer. So there's a series of 8 questions that are very detailed. The 9th one is to write out the opening prayer that Muslims recite. He wrote out the entire Surah Al-Fatiha and the entire translation, and that was not good enough. And this guy, he's a recent convert to Islam, and he still wrote out the whole Fatiha. It's amazing. But they denied him his halal diet. They said he's not a practicing Muslim. And when we filed, this lawsuit, and we started to get the documents in the case, we saw that they were actually giving similar tests to Hindus, Jews, Buddhists, Sikhs, and Christians. So if we are able to successfully challenge this policy, we would actually eliminate these exams for all religions across the board. And I believe that it's very clearly unconstitutional because the government cannot arbitrate in religion. They cannot say you're Muslim and you're not Muslim. They cannot ask specific questions about religion. It's absolutely unconstitutional. It's prohibited to do that. In this particular situation, you have a reverend that's grading this exam and unilaterally determining that this guy is not a Muslim. That's not allowed. So inshallah, we're in the beginning stages of this lawsuit, and hopefully we'll have a good update to give you on this. The next thing I want to talk about is, since last June, I believe, we've had such a significant influx of Syrian refugees that have been fleeing from the horrors in Syria and coming to the United States seeking protection here. There's been actually a significant number of refugees that are fleeing to Michigan because there's already such a large Syrian community in the state. So we filed the we started the Syria Asylum Refugee Project, and since last June I've filed about 60 cases. Alhamdulillah, and we've had a 100% success rate so far. What we're doing is we're filing temporary protected status cases and political asylum. Political asylum is indefinite protection, meaning they can remain in the United States for the rest of their lives. They would actually get citizenship and full benefits and be allowed to remain in the country. temporary protected status would allow them to stay for a much shorter period of time, which is right now until 2015, and it will probably be extended more than that. So just to give you an idea about these asylum cases, the national average right now is very low. It's only 12% if they're filed without an attorney. It's 50% if they're filed with an attorney. And on a national level in 2012, these are the entire cases. 148 cases were filed on behalf of Syrians, and only 37 were granted. So just to give you an idea of how difficult it is to get asylum, so alhamdulillah, we've had good success in this area. The assistance for the Syrian refugees that we're giving does not stop at asylum. Once they're able to get asylum, we also file to bring their family members who would also be entitled to receive asylum. They're also entitled to receive their social security number, driver's license, basically all benefits in the United States. So we would get them started on that so that they can maintain stability and move on. Now, regarding FBI interrogations, unfortunately this has been an ongoing issue. Ever since I joined CAIR, there's always been a problem with the FBI harassing the Muslim community. Particularly, whenever a certain event happens overseas in whatever country, we typically see that nationals or even people that have background from that particular country end up getting interrogated here. So for example, during the Egyptian Revolution, we had a lot of Egyptians that were being interrogated by the FBI. Same with Libyans, same with Syrians, same with Sudanese and Somalis. People across the board have been interrogated. A lot of these interrogations are abusive and asking questions that seem to be fishing expeditions, like they're searching for something. They're not there because they're investigating a crime like they're supposed to, but it's because they're just kind of fishing around and trying to get any information that they can get either about you or your family members or about people that are in your community that you know. So I always advise, in the strongest terms, that you should never speak with the FBI without an attorney, ever, and this is so critical. There is a lot that can happen during that time period. Just letting an FBI agent into your home is enough exposure, because whatever they see, you have already consented to them searching your home. So just allowing them into your home is going to expose you to things that you don't know. You don't know why they're investigating, and you don't know why they're there to question you. Sometimes questions are phrased in a certain way to make you think they're interested in such and such person, but actually they're asking about you or asking about your family and seeking those answers indirectly. So it's important to talk with an attorney, and the attorney can talk with the agent and find out what is it exactly that they're interested in. 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, when I've had people come to my office for assistance in an FBI interrogation, the FBI agent just disappeared after I contacted them. Because they know that these interrogations are abusive and they're not supposed to be doing it. This is very important, I think, for everybody to know. So I want to stress that. Now, regarding Masjid al-Haq, this is actually the masjid of the imam that was killed, Imam Uthman. This is his masjid, and you can see it's actually a residence. It's a very small house in an abandoned area. It's a very poor area. And this masjid was purchased, it's a home, 2-story flat. It was purchased for $300. But they bought it as a quitclaim deed. They did not consult with attorneys when they bought it, of course. And they ended up inheriting $7,000 worth of taxes. And they kept incurring taxes because they did not file for exemption. When I found out that they were in foreclosure, they were going to be evicted from the mosque, the first question that ran through my mind is, why are they paying taxes to begin with? They're a mosque. Mosques are not required to pay taxes. So we stepped in on this case, and we represented them in the foreclosure proceedings, and at the same time we filed for exemption so that they would no longer have to pay taxes on that property. Alhamdulillah, we were able to get them successfully out of foreclosure, and they're currently recognized as a tax-exempt organization, and they're not paying taxes, so they're still there operating on that mission. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Thomas More Law Center? This is a firm, a law firm, that everybody should be aware of. It's a nonprofit organization that works as a law firm. Everybody should be aware of this group. They're based in Michigan, in West Michigan, and they are perpetuating Islamophobia. They're one of those organizations that are working actively to disenfranchise the Muslim community. They filed a lawsuit against us. This is a reverse situation. And the reason why they filed a lawsuit is because our executive director wrote a letter regarding an event that they were hosting. They were hosting I don't want to call him renowned. They tried to make him renowned, and I don't like to repeat his name. I'm going to say his name one time. His name is Kamal Salim. He is parading around the United States claiming that he is a former Muslim, that he is a former terrorist, and that Islam taught him that he should be a terrorist, and that he was wanted by Interpol and the FBI. And his story is pretty, it's pretty extreme actually. And he converted to Christianity, he found his way, he renounced his terrorism activities, and now he's lecturing across the country about the dangers of Islam as religion. He was scheduled to speak by this organization at Allegan High School. And our executive director wrote a letter to the superintendent of the public schools and gave them some background information about who this guy is and asked them not to host. And the event was canceled. They filed a lawsuit against us, basically saying that we are denying them their freedom of speech. So that's what this lawsuit is. Alhamdulillah, I think that we're still in the early stages. We've filed back and forth to get this lawsuit dismissed. I hope we have a good update for you soon. But I think this case is absolutely ridiculous, and they have a stated mission that's written on their website that one of their motives is to use the law as a tool to drain the resources of Muslim organizations as a way of attacking us. I take this as a compliment that they picked us to attack. That means we must be making a positive impact, alhamdulillah, and that's why they're trying to stop us. Now, regarding the watch list issue, this is also a major problem. I get these cases every week, unfortunately. People, anyone in the community, whether religious leaders, activists, or just ordinary Muslims, everybody's coming with this issue. There's three different kinds of watch lists that we're talking about. One is the one where you see it. It's the 4 S's that are stamped on your boarding pass, which stands for secondary selective screening, something like that. The second kind is the watch list that's maintained at the border, and that results in the treatment that I was describing at the very beginning. The treatment where they're getting handcuffed and detained for several hours and asked about their religious beliefs. That one is called IBIS. It's the border watch list. The third one is the no-fly list, which is the worst. That's the one where you're actually not allowed to fly at all, and this has become a problem where Muslim citizens, U.S. citizens, after they travel abroad, then they get added on the no-fly list and they can't get back in the country. So that's been an ongoing problem that we've had to deal with. We've had some successes in removing people off of the quadruple S list. Our national office has been able to get some people off of the no-fly list, alhamdulillah. So we've had some successes. These cases tend to be more difficult because they're done under the guise of national security. And when something is under national security, you never find out why. You never find out who put you on the list. There's thousands and thousands of government agencies across the country. Any one of them could have put you on the list. And you don't know what the source of the problem is. And the only remedy that you have is to file what's called an inquiry with Homeland Security. You file an inquiry, and they send you a letter back, the same letter to everybody that says, we cannot confirm nor deny if you're on a watch list, but if you are by mistake, rest assured we took care of it and it's not a problem. So it doesn't really say anything, and right now we're mounting a legal challenge. I'm working on a case with the national office to mount a legal challenge so that we can, get this remedy process fixed. Because these people are being denied their rights without even having a chance to go to court and challenge it. Now, with this particular case, I don't know how many of you have heard of Debbie Schlessel. I don't like to give her more notoriety either. Nobody, really. I think everyone in Southeast Michigan always raises their hands. This is the first time I've seen this. She's more well-known in Michigan than she is in other parts of the country. But she has basically dedicated her life to blogging about Muslims. She'll pick the Muslims that are most active in the community, and she'll blog about them, linking them to terrorism and you name it. She'll just make up whatever she wants and destroy reputations one by one by one. That's been her life's mission. She has a blog. Please don't go on it and support it. But she, to offer an example, she picked an imam. She linked him to somebody. She shows a picture of that person talking to someone else, talking to someone else, talking to someone else, and then at the very bottom he's talking to Hassan Nasrallah, therefore he's a terrorist. That's the type of person that she is. She's been working very hard to defame us as an organization as well. A couple years ago, Debbie Schlessel. A couple years ago, she started an organization called CAIR Michigan, the Council on American-Islamic Relations Michigan, our exact same name. She announced herself as executive director of our organization, and she started sending emails and letters to judges and to attorneys that are opposing us on lawsuits and saying, I never authorized this lawsuit, I'm the executive director, therefore you must toss this case. Or, she tried to interfere with our work in so many different ways. We did file a trademark infringement lawsuit against her. We recently settled the case, so I cannot discuss the terms of our settlement agreement with her, but we had already received a court order that ordered her to get rid of all of those names because they are infringing on our trademarks. So this is a second case of battling Islamophobia. Now this case is also a recent settled case, alhamdulillah. I can't discuss the terms of the settlement, but basically what happened with this girl, she became Muslim while she was working at a restaurant. And she decided to put hijab on, and right after she put hijab, she got fired from her job. The supervisors at her job, they would tell her repeatedly, take your hijab off, it doesn't go well with the uniform, it doesn't look good with it. If you don't take your hijab off, then we will, you're going to lose your job, we'll fire you. She would refuse. They started to make comments about, very disrespectful comments about Islam and our Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's what led up to her getting fired. She got fired within a couple weeks after she put her hijab on. We filed a lawsuit in this case, and we recently settled it out of court. So those are the cases that I wanted to highlight. I do want to offer, the opportunity for everyone to ask me questions.
How much was the sentence?
I wish I could disclose it, but I can't. I can't. Nobody has any questions? Okay, go ahead.
Equality of property, just to give it like same inheritance, is done for the same issue.
I was not able to hear the question.
equality for the Eid holiday.
Equality for
The
Eid
one in
holiday.
Maryland, they just started a campaign in Maryland. He's wondering if we can do something in Michigan.
Okay, so we actually recently hired a new position. She's been such an excellent addition to our staff, and I hope that all of you get the chance to meet her soon. Her name is Warda Khalid, and she just recently took her bar. She's also going to, inshallah, be an attorney for CAIR. Her position is the Safe Spaces Program Coordinator. What the Safe Spaces Program does is it proactively reaches out to different institutions, employers, hospitals, schools, universities, nursing homes across the board, and she'll work with them to develop positive policies so that Muslims don't face discrimination or so that Muslims have their religious accommodations met. So you brought up Eid. She has been working extensively on Eid, and she's had a lot of success in several different school districts. I cannot cite her successes, I don't know them by heart, but alhamdulillah, she's had a lot of success with Eid, with halal food being provided in schools, with different types of programs being implemented. She's also working on sensitivity training, so she'll provide training to different staff so that they know how to deal with certain issues that might come up if there's a Muslim student, or at a hospital if there's a Muslim patient, and so on and so forth.
Is your office dealing with cases like denial of a green card or citizenship or delaying?
We do.
National office dealing with that?
Yes, the question is about naturalization, citizenship delay, and green card delay. We do handle those cases, and that's something that we can definitely talk about after. All of our CAIR offices do handle those types of cases.
With the demand states that if the government doesn't reply, are they allowed to do that?
Well,
Can you repeat the question?
yes. The question is about the Imam Luqman case and how they've been stalling the case and refused to respond regarding the merits of the case. Are they allowed to do that? I want to say no, they're not allowed to do that. They've done it. But to answer your question more specifically, what we did, initially we had to identify the FBI agents as unidentified FBI agents. So the lawsuit is the estate of Luqman Abdullah versus unidentified FBI agents. The reason for that is because all the litigation, all the lawsuits that we filed, all the documents that we got, every single document blacked out the names of the shooters. So we had to put them as unidentified agents. So what the government has argued in this case is you can't sue unidentified people. We don't have to respond. Okay, so that's what their strategy is in getting this case thrown out. So we've done two things. One is we added two names. So those two names have to respond, and in fact they just recently, they didn't respond to the lawsuit. They filed their own attempt to dismiss the lawsuit. If the judge denies that, he will order them to respond. They have to respond. But the other thing that we did is we said, wait, hold up a second. You cannot hide evidence from us. You can't say that he was armed and he was engaged in a shootout and he wasn't. And you can't hide the names of these agents from us and then say, it's your bad, you didn't get the names. There is a law called the Michigan Fraudulent Concealment Act. And what this law says is if you hide important evidence on a case, and if you hide the names of the people that committed a wrong, then you cannot hide and say, we don't have to, the lawsuit should be dismissed. Because it's fraud. Meaning, our argument in this case is that the government covered up what happened on that day. This is a very unique argument that's not typically made because it's very hard to prove cover-up in any case. But there was no gun. He was not armed. There was no gun. The evidence that we got, not a single shred of evidence says he had a gun. It was completely made up in our opinion. And we've tested the evidence and we've determined that he does not have a gun. He never had a gun. So when the government says that he has a gun, they're essentially, lying about what happened so that we cannot file a lawsuit. You cannot file a lawsuit against the government if you're armed. If you shoot at an agent, they have a right to kill you. So by saying that he was armed, the family cannot sue. But the moment we learned that he was not armed, and a witness came forward that saw the whole thing, and he's testifying that the imam was not armed. He's the current imam of the masjid. He's testifying that he was not armed and he saw the whole thing. That means the government covered up what happened, and they no longer have the right to ask the court to dismiss the case. So if the judge agrees with us, this is a very unique argument. It's a tough argument, but the law is clear. And, part of our argument is that the judge, under the law, does not have the right to decide if there was a cover-up, if there was fraud. It has to be a jury. So we have the right to go all the way to jury and have a trial on this case. That's our argument right now, and we hope that the judge is going to rule in our favor.
Who were the two people added?
The two people that were added are the special agent in charge of the entire FBI Detroit division. He's the one who directed the operation. He was about 2 miles away from the warehouse watching the whole thing on video. So we added him, and we added the head of the warehouse operation inside. His name is George Nicolopoulos. So Andrew Arena and George Nicolopoulos are the two people that were added.
Why don't you add that head of the FBI or within the whole bureau?
The question is, why can't you add the head of the entire FBI, which is Robert S. Miller III in D.C.? The reason is because you cannot sue the head of a department for money. We're suing for money. You can either sue for money or sue to change law. Okay, those are your two options. When you want to change law, like for the border lawsuit, we want to change the law that allows the government to discriminate against Muslims. So you sue the head. But when you're suing for money, like in this instance, we don't want to, there's no law to change. It was a single incident that took place. There was a harm that happened, and the family has a right to money. And you can only sue the people that are directly involved in the shooting itself. So we didn't even sue all of the FBI agents that were in the warehouse. There was 80 agents in the warehouse. We're suing 4 of them, the 4 shooters. There was also the Detroit police, the Dearborn police. Everyone was there. Even the Royal Canadian Police was there. Everybody was there. We didn't sue any of them because, we wouldn't be able to sue them. Nothing from the sisters?
How did you know that he was incited to commit crimes several times? I mean, what was the evidence that you could bring up?
The question is, what's the evidence? How do we know that the imam was asked so many times to commit a crime and that he refused? Believe it or not, it's actually documented. To offer just one example, the informant, and this is all recorded on wiretap, the informant asked the imam, do you want to blow up the Super Bowl? Let's blow up the Super Bowl. They had a whole discussion, and the imam's response is, why would I want to do that? Why would you want to hurt innocent people? And it's actually in the complaint that was filed by the FBI. So there was a series of attempts, and he consistently refused every single attempt. Now, this is an important issue that you brought up. Entrapment cases in general have been happening ever since the Obama administration. It doesn't mean they're perpetuated by Obama. These are policies that might have been put in place before. But definitely under the Obama administration, these entrapment cases have skyrocketed and been taking place across the country. And what do I mean by entrapment? There's 2 types of FBI. They're not actually agents. There's FBI informants and agent provocateurs. FBI informants are regular civilians that are hired by the FBI for whatever reason. Usually there's some sort of vulnerability. It could be that they have a criminal record, they're facing prison. It could be that they could be deported soon, or it could be they're financially strapped and need the money. So the informants are usually taken in that way and asked to report. But on the other hand, there's agent provocateurs who actively try to get people to commit a crime. And that's what we saw in this particular case. This is the only instance where an imam was actually killed as a result. This is the first imam that was killed by the FBI.
I wanted to know, it seems like there's extreme tolerance in Michigan and there's extreme bigotry. What do you think that the ratio is one side to the other?
The question is about how much bigotry or tolerance have we seen here in Michigan? Of course, I can only offer this as an opinion because I gave you some examples of extreme bigotry. Honestly, I've seen more tolerance in Michigan than I have throughout the country. The bigotry that I'm talking about is actually organized bigotry perpetuated by certain individuals and certain organizations in the country. Our national office just released the first ever Islamophobia report within the last few days. I encourage you to go on the national website and download the Islamophobia report and read it because it goes into the funding and the tactics of these organizations and how to perpetuate bigotry. There is a woman by the name of Pamela Geller. She actually wrote a book on what to do to stop an Islamic institution from being built. So those talking points that I talked about earlier, traffic, noise, she says all of those as very specific instructions. And that's what we've been seeing. So the opposition at the Sterling Heights malls, most of those people are not neighbors. A lot of people actually fly across the country just so that they can go oppose these projects.
Do you think that there's a point where Islamophobia can have the same consequences as homophobia or anti-Semitism?
Can you elaborate on what you mean by
I
that?
mean, like, if somebody is accused of anti-Semitism, there's a huge backlash generally because of the backing of that ethnic group. Do you think that we as Muslims can organize to the point where it becomes political suicide or, dangerous for people to make religion an issue?
So basically, and you're saying essentially, just to repeat for everyone else, right now, homophobia or anti-Semitism or certain types of discrimination, if you are outwardly anti-Semitic, it's going to be political suicide for you if you're running for political office. You cannot make certain statements without having some sort of backlash. Why, is Islamophobia going to get to that point? So, right now, as you're aware, Islamophobia almost is not even political suicide. It's almost a step up for a lot of politicians, and it's part of their platform to perpetuate Islamophobia. And it hasn't been damaging in any way for them. Our goal is to equate Islamophobia with anti-Semitism and other types of discrimination. And that, I believe, will empower Muslims, and it's very important. That's part of the reason why our national office opened an Islamophobia department. All they do is monitor these groups and work towards eliminating Islamophobia. This report is a first step, but the department is doing much more than that, and I hope that we do get to the point.
So what if you put the stars and border of domestic over here running back, and I have to return. So they stop you, they look at your passport, they ask you a question, and sometimes occasionally, one time they said that you need to put your car aside. So after maybe an hour or so, or 30 minutes later, and let me go. So I asked, what is this exactly? Drugging? So why you told me this time? So then the one officer, he said, we call it bridge bingo. You know what? There is a blue water bridge, goes to Canada and come back to the States. So there's a bridge bingo. And we go, have you right, huh? So they were like, no sir, we are not actually discriminating because of that reason, but besides you, there is also 4 or 5 people that have. It's just the way the system does it. So my question is that in that case, if they will take more time, or if they really start to tell me what are my rights will be so I can help.
So what are your rights at the border? If, there's different types of reasons why you might be stopped at the border. I'm not going to go through all of them. But one is the example that this brother just gave us, and that's just a random selection at the border. There's also religious profiling, which we've discussed, and there's the religious profiling for the purpose of religious questioning, which is our lawsuit. Regarding random selection, the customs officials are within their rights to detain you, to arrest you, to handcuff you, to hold you in a cell for several hours. I've seen cases where they were held almost a day, and the judge said that's fine. They have the right to strip search you. They have the right to do pretty much anything at the border in order to learn more information about you and make sure that you're safe to allow you to enter the country. And this is why this case, has had to get past a huge hurdle, because the customs officials are given plenary power, and they actually have a level of very broad immunity from lawsuit. They cannot be sued. Regarding religious profiling, this question is not clear. Are they allowed to profile at the border? Clearly it's happening. You might end up being detained, and all you see in the room of people that are being detained are Somalis and Arabs. Very common at the Ambassador Bridge. So religious profiling, is it allowed? Our lawsuit will address that question for the whole country. Religious questioning at the border, is that allowed? I'm going to say no, but there is no law that currently says that, and our lawsuit, inshallah, would be the first to say that religious questioning is not allowed.
What should you do if they ask you to log into your computer or take access to your smartphone and go through the email?
The question is regarding, if they want to download information off of your computer, your cell phone, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, well, to backtrack a little bit, let's say one thing. You do not have a right to an attorney at the border. There are people that have tried to contact their attorneys to ask these types of questions, and they're just not allowed. If an attorney tries to go there, they'll literally have to wait outside until the person comes out. So you do not have a right to an attorney, and you do not have much other rights actually at the border. If they want to search your computer, your phone, there's very little that you can do. The law is not very clear on this area. There is a lawsuit that I'm aware of that was filed by the Electronic Frontier Foundation. So they're trying to get more information regarding, or try to improve the law in that area to protect the privacy of individuals. I personally had that happen to me. I tried the attorney-client privilege. It didn't work. They can take whatever they want from you. Now, you have the right not to answer any questions. As U.S. citizens, you have the right not to answer any questions. As an immigrant, you have the right not to answer any questions unless it's about immigration. If it's about your immigration status, you have to answer those questions.
You mentioned earlier Islamophobia is not hasn't been at the same level as anti-Semitism is now nationally. Why is that? Is it because of lack of our Muslim participation in the political spectrum, or why? Why is that lack of provision? Is it because of lack of a number?
The question is regarding why is Islamophobia not given the same treatment as anti-Semitism, right? This is a difficult question for me to answer, and I'm sure a lot of people in the room can answer this question a lot better than me. But I suspect the reason is because anti-Semitism is a deep-rooted problem that has existed for a long period of time, and it manifested itself in the form of the Holocaust and a lot of other tragedies that happened to the Jewish people. And for that reason, this issue, they have been trying to address it since that time. Islamophobia, I want to categorize it more as a more recent phenomenon, because before 9/11, we did not see that Islamophobia so much. The discrimination maybe was there a little bit because Muslims, for the most part, first generation, second generation that are here, we're a young community in this country. But after 9/11, that's when Islamophobia skyrocketed. So we're only in 2013 right now. We've had much less time to try to address this issue. And it's obviously a lot more complicated because the nation was, there's 9/11 took place, and a lot of hostility and feelings, very strong feelings towards Muslims are prevalent in the country right now. So that doesn't mean that we don't need to continue to try to work our hardest to dispel misconceptions and try to bridge differences in understanding with the American community at large. That's our responsibility, and inshallah that will be an issue that will be corrected soon, I hope, inshallah.
One more question. If any member of Muslim community feels that their rights are being infringed upon, or for whatever reason, they feel they are being violated, and they need to get hold of you or your office, what's your turnaround time to react?
Our turnaround time to react to a complaint. We try to, every complaint is very important. So we take all complaints very seriously. So typically we respond right away. And if we're not able to respond, or if your complaint is not exactly the type of work that we deal with, then we'll put you in touch with people that can take care of your complaint in particular. Inshallah, I would say our turnaround time is pretty fast because we take these cases very seriously. We get a lot of emergency cases that come in as well.
Let's take one more question, maybe from the sister side. Anyone else?
I think I only got a couple questions from the sisters.
All right, if they're not, one more question from the brother's side, because we need to catch up with Salah and she needs to drive back.
Two questions. Can you elaborate on the Syrian refugee again?
Yeah, to elaborate about the Syrian refugees. So I said that I filed more than 60 cases, alhamdulillah, and we've gotten approval on all of them. The types of people that we're applying for, these are refugees that really suffered tragedies in Syria. So people that have been tortured, people that are physicians that try to give assistance to wounded civilians. And this is considered to be a crime of treason for a physician to treat a wounded civilian. Humanitarian workers that are trying to distribute blankets, medicines, milk, baby formula, basic necessities to refugees or to wounded civilians in the country. These are also people that are considered to have committed treason. People that are trying to collect information, YouTube videos, photographs, and distributing this information to media outlets. These people are also committing the crime of treason. So we're filing on behalf of people that are facing persecution, that really they're very likely to be tortured or executed if they're forced back to go to Syria. So we're filing to give them protection in the United States, to allow them to stay here, and to be able to bring their family to come live here as well. So alhamdulillah, a couple weeks ago, I provided intensive legal training to all of the CAIR attorneys across the country, and now all the CAIR attorneys, after seeing the success of our office, are starting to pick up these cases and take them as well. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much for